And that should be good. Okay. Right. Bob, I don't know. I would ask you out on the West Coast there, if you guys ever done a King Tide event, because I know your King Tides tend to be in January. I'm pretty sure when you get your highest tides for the year. But we were just planning something the other night, and Stephanie who's on the call was there, and we have ours at the end of October this year of all things, so a little bit different.
Scott, as far as I know, we have not done any such event in Santa Cruz, but there may be other West Coast congregations in San Francisco or perhaps Los Angeles area that may have. I just don't know.
Okay. All right. Why don't we get started here? I'm going to go around and ask you to tell us your name and where you're talking from, and if you're either with either with a congregation, if you are, or if you're with Nifty, you may do that. So Josh, why don't you start us off here, and we'll just go through that.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Josh. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm currently in Phoenix, Arizona. Was that all I'm sorry, was that all that you want?
Yeah, you're with Nifty. I'm not sure everybody on the phone call knows that. So tell us again which area you're representing.
Yeah, so is everyone on the call familiar with Nifty?
Well, I think Lynn is, who just joined us, but yeah.
Yeah, great, cool. Anyways, Nifty is for, in case anyone is not familiar, is basically the URJ's youth movement. And Evan and I, and along with Lynn, and one other guy who may or may not be joining us soon, are working on the Environmental Justice Task Force, and they're working to improve basically how Nifty responds to sustainability and our climate responsibility at events, and then also trying to use our youth reach to affect greater change within the reform movement as it relates to climate change. So anyways, I'm here, I guess, representing Nifty, and specifically Nifty Southwest, which is my region in Phoenix, Arizona.
Great. Thank you so much. Rabbi Katie. You need to turn on your mic. Here, maybe I'll get.
Okay. So yes, I'm Rabbi Katie Allen. I'm outside of Boston, and I am with the Jewish Climate Action Network in Massachusetts, and we're working hard to get our act together and get the information together so that we can support the climate strike and spread the word about it. And so that's really interested to hear from you folks today. And there's Fred's from JCAN, and I think Howard is on the call too, and he's the one who's doing the heavy lifting and getting us organized.
Great, thank you. Fred, you're up next.
Okay, Fred Davis, also outside of Boston, Massachusetts, also Jewish Climate Action Network. We are a loose association of over now 90 synagogues nationwide, actually some in Canada, some in Israel, but Boston area, but dispersed throughout the country. And we do occasional webinars helping synagogues work towards lowering their carbon footprint.
Great, thanks, Fred. Evan, got you next.
Hi, my name is Evan. I use he, him pronouns. Sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit, but I live in Vancouver, BC, and I'm here on behalf of Nifty, specifically Nifty Northwest. That's my region. So, yeah.
Thanks a lot. Save that voice. Bob, you're up next. Let me see if I can unmute. Go ahead, Bob.
I'm trying.
Okay, gotcha.
Thank you for unmuting. I wasn't able to get it undone. Bob Kibrick, Temple Bethel in Aptos, California. And I'm also a member of the Climate Issues Research Team of the California Religious Action Council, or RACCA.
Great, thanks, Bob. Nicole, why don't we come back to you in a minute, okay? And we'll introduce you and come back. Lynn. Lynn, I can't hear you, but it doesn't say me. It doesn't. Okay, thanks. Oh, there you go.
I'm trying to do
All right.
too many. I'm trying to use a different headset, and clearly that's not working. I'm Lynn. I'm the Nifty Director of Engagement, and I'm here with Josh and Evan. We're just getting started on a task force, and we just want to be kept in the loop.
Great, thank you for joining us. All right, Stephanie, you're up next. She's joining us by phone.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Jopi. I work with Scott. We're the co-chair of our Tikkun Olam committee. So I guess I'm kind of his sidekick. Whatever he says to do, I do. We have a lot of things going on in Temple Solel. We have our King Tide event, where shortly after that, like 2-3 days after that, we're having our Parshat Noah event. What else, Scott? We have a lot going on.
Yeah.
Green Yard Temple. We're involved with a zone. We're involved with Green Faith. And I am so happy to have the students here. You really enrich us, and it's going to be our earth. So I'm really glad you guys are here.
Thanks, Stephanie. Howard, you're up.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now. Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Oh, good. I'm Howard Bernstein from Congregation Bethel of the Sudbury River Valley, which is next door to Concord, Massachusetts. And I've been working mostly lately, though, with JCAN in Massachusetts with Rabbi Katie and Fred Davis there. I've been making, hi Fred, I've been making a lot of contacts with the people who are organizing the Boston strike, and trying to develop materials for us to do outreach to get folks from congregations involved, including their own youth, since it is a youth climate strike. Although they want us adults to show up too, and to support the youth and the strike.
Indeed, indeed. Thanks so much, Howard. All right, so yes, thanks all. This is great that we've got Nifty represented so well here, and I'm going to introduce Nicole in a minute, and then maybe she'll add some things with her biography. But we're so thrilled to have so many Nifty members. Nicole, just for your information, we were very excited to get Nifty participation, as you may have heard from some of them. You know, they have an environment and climate change task force they're developing this year. So that's very exciting for all of us, and we think that'll be a really important piece of the Jewish community this year. So we're very excited that they're joining us in general and for this call in particular. So Nicole, we're gonna get you started in a minute. Nicole, I had the pleasure of meeting about a week and a half ago, and she was with a new group that's forming in Broward County, where we are, Stephanie and I, taking a look at the different groups involved in the Climate Alliance here. And Nicole was very composed and got up in front of the group and talked about her involvement with Fridays for the Future, which is, I think a number of you probably are familiar with that group, going out and demonstrating here to raise attention about the emergency state that we're in. And she's a senior this year in Cypress Bay High School, which is one of our well-known high schools in Broward County in the western area. And he's taken the initiative to also be involved in a speaker training group with one of our well-known climate education groups here in South Florida. So Nicole, I've asked to give us about a 10-minute overview, and she's already taken over the screen here, I can see, and she's going to share that with you. And I asked her to do that presentation, and then we'll have some time for questions for her about the event. And as I think many of you know, this climate emergency has led to a lot of youth getting involved and really taking initiative to start this whole climate strike for us and get a lot of generations involved with this event coming up in the fall, as Howard was saying. So we appreciate everybody being on the call, and I'm going to turn that over to Nicole. Maybe we'll just, I got an 857 number, and maybe we'll ask that person to sort of tell us their name and where they're calling from before Nicole takes over, and then who is that?
Hi, this is Rabbi Moshe Givental. I'm calling from Detroit, Michigan.
Great, thanks, Rabbi Moshe. And now we've got some of the center of the country along with four areas at the corners of the continent here. So glad to see you joining us. And Nicole, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and start your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Scott. Thank you for everyone that gated onto the call. Whoops. Okay, so about me, obviously my name is Nicole. I'm from South Florida, and I got involved with like climate activism, I want to say 2 years ago, but I didn't start getting like more heavily involved until like this past summer, or just like a little bit past this summer. I got involved through literally a Google search. I didn't know what was going on. I was looking for local climate organizations, and I found CLEO. I found Schools Under 2C, which is an organization up in Washington State. And obviously, I've been a lot more involved with Fridays for Future, where we strike every Friday. And we strike from school. And Florida Climate Strike, which is like the state subsect of Youth Climate Strike, which is a national organization, and they're part of the coalition that's helping organize all of the climate strikes, the national solidarity events with the International Global Climate Strike. So first, you all seem to be very well versed on climate, but I thought we could go over some of the science anyways, just so that we all have like the same base knowledge. So this is just an overview of like the impacts of going up to 2 degrees Celsius. I don't think I have to go over all of them. Obviously, sea level rise is a super big impact, so is loss of habitat and hot days, cold nights. I think this is more graphical, so if you're more visual, I think this is a good representation as well. And so it talks not only about sea level rise, but like what people are going to be affected by sea level rise. It says that 9% of the world's population will be exposed to heat waves, and 28% will be exposed to heat waves every 20 years at 2 degrees Celsius. And then it talks about how people are going to be affected by sea level rise here. I don't know if can you guys see my mouse?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is just an overview, and so this is obviously how global warming works. So there's incoming UV radiation, there's incoming light. Most of the waves that come through our atmosphere are light. There are obviously UV, but visible light is the most common light. And so then I'm a big physics nut. There's something called the black body effect, and it just means that certain things absorb different amounts of energy. And so that light, when it comes through, obviously it turns into heat energy, and the ocean absorbs like 90%, around 90%, 93% of that energy that comes through, and the land absorbs the other amount. And things such as like asphalt obviously take in more than like ice sheets. This is called albedo, which is that white thing. So if you have hold on, I have a graphic there. So if you have high albedo, then you're more reflective. So that's this image. And so if we have lower albedo, it absorbs more, which is what's causing the feedback loops in the Arctic and on Greenland. So there's two different things causing sea level rise. There's thermal expansion. Okay, so I got a question. What is CLEO? CLEO is Climate Leaders Engagement Opportunities. It's based in South Florida. They don't have any other chapters. They only have a chapter in Miami, and it was founded by this awesome woman. Her name's Caroline Lewis, about 10 years ago, and they aim to increase climate literacy. And so they're currently starting a project with a really fourth largest district in the nation, the fourth largest school district in the nation, to try and increase climate literacy and hopefully increase energy efficiency. So that's the sea level rise science. I did want to include this because it's a really good book that talks about the sixth extinction, what we're currently going through, and the past. Obviously, this is a graph that most of us hopefully have seen, and it is the graph that's mostly used to reference how carbon has changed within the past however long period. But this book tries to relate it more to a historical sense. So obviously, it shortens it down to different historical periods. I can't name one for you, but so it tries to relate so certain arguments that some climate deniers say. So oh, we've had carbon levels as high as we are right now before, and the book will be yeah, that's when all the dinosaurs died. It shows that when they were when the carbon was this high, there were similar effects in the past and what led to those extinctions and ice ages and such. So a lot of the times when we see this chart, some people are saying no, we're still going in cycles. I think a really common what I respond to that, I personally think there's two responses. One is we're obviously not in a cycle anymore. We've increased exponentially. We're nowhere within this range that we've been in for the past 600,000 years. And I think the other one is, sure, if you still believe we're in a cycle and we've increased this fast to this high temperatures, then when we reach that line where we start digressing back into cold, then that decrease is also going to be extremely rapid, and we're not going to be prepared for the subsequent ice age. The civil disruption, I'm assuming. I'm not a good speller either. So obviously it impacts economics, and I guess the part that you want to get to is this part. So obviously people who contribute the least amount to climate change are going to be affected the most. I can't go. Anyway, sorry. So the people who contribute the least are affected the most. This is because there's climate gentrification. I don't really know about the areas you're in, but one, real estate is a huge market in South Florida just because it's a really large retirement place, sorry. And two, obviously having access to the beaches is really appealing to people. But obviously with sea level rise, sorry. How long will it? Give me another 20 minutes, probably longer. Sorry. And so with sea level rise happening and people noticing and realtors noticing, more and more people are seeking higher ground. And the higher ground in the past was often related to bad areas. Where they were rated D and F areas, and so those areas were allocated to people of color, Black people, brown people, and Hispanic people. So we have large clusters of underrepresented, underserved communities on these high grounds, and with realtors like realizing that they want, like, that customers want higher ground, they're buying this land away from these low-income people, and like the low-income people can't do anything about it because for the most part they're renting, and the landlords are more than happy to sell their houses or apartments to these people who are offering them more money than they've seen in their life. I didn't prepare anything. So you said, i.e., think of Syria. I didn't really prepare anything about globally, more so domestically. But if any of you have comments about the global problems, I definitely can try and answer them. I know the roots of climate change are sometimes like scary to talk about, but capitalism, patriarchy, and colonialism have a very large history of exploitation, and so I wanted to include some pictures. This is a little political cartoon. I thought it was funny. So anyways, capitalism obviously is rooted in the fact of productivity and sees everything as a resource, and that's the way it views land. It just views it as a resource and not something that's intrinsically has value. So mitigating it to a resource makes it a commodity, something we can exploit. But obviously that has led to the problems that we're facing now. And so another example is that it affects like low-income countries the most too. For example, in Haiti, I think it is, their like border with the Dominican, I'm really bad at geography. So on their side, all of their trees are like barren because they've had to deforest so much to like make money. Meanwhile, like the Dominican, which is like substantially more wealthy than Haiti, I think I'm saying the right countries. These countries have had to export a lot more in order to make a living, but the other countries haven't. And so not only is their air quality worse, but they don't have any like trees. They have no like replanting systems. A lot of people like question why the patriarchy is involved. Mostly it comes from like possession, and so again, people think that they can like possess the earth, and that was like a huge belief when colonizers came to America. Just tying these in, when colonizers came to America, they took the land from the natives and said, "This is our land now," and had very strong like libertarian property rights beliefs, and they thought that they could own the land. Meanwhile, like the natives said, no, this is our like communal land, and like we share it and stuff. Their practices were obviously a lot more sustainable because they lived off the earth and respected the earth. But just going back to the patriarchy, I know I went off onto a tangent into colonialism, but there's also really close ties between nature and women. And so some people say like that's like sexist, but like women have the potential to birth. They have extremely close ties with nature. And so some authors will say that that close tie is what makes men want to, or hypermasculine people want to possess the earth. Obviously, I'm not talking about all men. Or like any men at all. Obviously it's a subconscious thing. I just wanted to bring that up. I know it's a difficult conversation. Here, going back to climate gentrification. Climate gentrification. So these are the elevations in South Florida. And so these areas here that are in purple, that's what we call the South Florida like ridge. And that's where a lot of people of color are concentrated on. And in these areas, the yellow areas on the beach, that's where a lot of people with wealth are concentrated. And these people who have wealth are saying, oh, we have to move onto the ridge now because climate change is going to take our land. And so I think it's really funny that they recognize that it exists, but aren't doing anything to help other than take more people's land. And so climate racism is something I was actually introduced to recently, or I guess explained better than it was before. And so essentially it's the principle of putting like energy plants and things that pollute more in communities of color, as you can see here, or like low income communities, because they have no like willpower, not willpower, but influence to tell like the local government to not put those there, because energy plants are some sort of investment. So usually the cities like the revenue that they're getting, or the local municipalities like the revenue that they're getting, and they really don't have concern over like the people in those areas. So it affects low-income people the most. So now on to solutions. Oops. So obviously the next international strike is the 20th. This is the coalition of groups that are of youth groups that are involved with planning the September 20th strike. That's international. So this is Earth Uprising, and this is Sunrise, and this is 0 Hour. The rest have their names on there. And so a lot of this information can be found on strikewithus.org. That's what I was trying to pull up earlier. But strikewithus.org has a list of the youth coalition members, of the adult coalition members. Sierra Club's part of it. Yeah, I can't remember the adult groups off the top of my head. But a lot of these groups are involved with planning the September 20th strike. From what I've seen, Youth Climate Strike has been taking the lead, and all of these people have been like following along, solely because Youth Climate Strike organized the March and May climate strikes that were also international solidarity groups. Thank you. Bye. Sorry. So I've been planning my state's my state's strikes, because I'm like at the state level of involvement, and so we've been trying to partner up with other groups who aren't climate related at all, and so outreach is a really big is a really big thing when we're planning like strikes, especially when we want the size and turnout that we want. And so we've been reaching out to Democratic groups, Republican groups, conservative groups, libertarian groups, just to get as much support as possible. So that's been the works on that. If you want more information, or if you want more information, or to see if there's already a strike being planned by you, strikewithus.org should have like a list of events, or they should be on Action Network under Youth Climate Strike US. Sorry. But if you do want to plan one, Youth Climate Strike and Youth Climate Strike on their website, they have like where to find us page, and there's like each state and like each state's emails on there. Typically the emails like the state name at youthclimatestrikeus.org, and you can email them to see if you can set up a strike. They will try and help you fund resources, but it seems we're short on money. But otherwise, you can always host a solidarity event and reach out to them, and like they can help you outreach, even if they're not financially supporting the strike you all plan. Obviously, there's like more concrete solutions. If you don't want to do like civil disobedience disruption, Extinction Rebellion is like the biggest organization that focuses on like actual civil disobedience and doing taking like illegal actions for attention. Some notable things that they've done, there's a student that's on a hunger strike for like their city to declare a climate emergency or pass the climate emergency resolution. But let's go back to lobbying. So there's obviously a ton of different resolutions. I don't know how any of you all feel about them, but there's the Green New Deal, who wants to, all of these usually want to focus on climate justice as well, except the 100% renewable goal, that would just be very concrete. Declaring a climate emergency, people say that that's to tell the truth, and so that people actually start noticing climate change. So obviously we have our groups that like know about climate change and talk about them, and usually those are like the more educated levels and the people who are like actually involved in politics or in the educational system, stuff like that. In the next 24 days, how do you see your work ramping up? How will you reach schools just starting? Sure. So sorry, I'm like just saw these questions. So within the next 24 days, we're actually having a meeting tomorrow to discuss more logistics because there's been some confusion with the times and the locations. So we're meeting tomorrow to iron out the logistics, try and figure out who our partners actually are. Why am I involved with the strike? I'm involved just because I'm legitimately like afraid for like my future and like the future of other people, and like even like the current situation, like king tides. I didn't even know this existed until like I had like my climate literacy training with Cleo, and that's crazy to me that like twice a year like streets literally flood up to like the doorstops of houses. I also live like on the Everglades. Like I'm probably like a 5-minute drive from the Everglades and Alligator Alley. And so there's actually like a lawsuit going on with this oil company who's trying to drill in the Everglades, and like I think the state approved of it, but it's just really confusing, and I just don't understand why anyone would approve of oil drilling in the Everglades, or how that's even allowed. It's probably because they're not drilling in the Everglades National Park, but in the Fish and Wildlife like conservation area. It's a mess. I really don't think that should be happening. What have older folks done for you as a youth climate striker? It's the like adult connections have definitely helped with outreach, just because they've been in the game for longer. So getting more people to show up. I met a few people who organized like the People's Climate Strike in Fort Lauderdale 4 years ago. And so they have like this huge network of people who would be like willing to show up to like subsequent the future strikes, and so it's just really good to have people who can help you out, like get people, especially when you're just starting out, and so I think that's definitely a very big part of like the adult support. I've also gotten a lot of just like encouragement from adults that I haven't really gotten from youth, sadly, and so it really helps like not be like upset about not being like successful or like successful. But yeah, so you can lobby at any level. I was just at the like our county commission, and we passed some energy efficiency resolution for our utilities people, FPL.
Nicole,
yes.
do you mind taking questions?
Yeah.
As you go?
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if you want to say anything more about that, not getting enough support from young people.
Sure. At least where I live in a fairly affluent area, and I've seen that no one really cares, and that's sad. But so people, like some people that I talk to, like know about it. So people who are in AP Enviro, people who take a lot of AP or high-level classes know that climate change is a thing. They just don't want to act on it, or they want to be very passive in their actions. So they'll fill out online petitions, but they won't actually cut out to our actions, even though they're very accessible to them. And another thing, like some people like will walk by us and they'll say like, oh, that's like fake activism, and then just keep walking. And I think it's ironic because they're saying what we're doing is fake activism while they're literally doing nothing. and so it happens, sadly. So my school has like 5,000 kids total. My graduating class will have 1,200-ish. And probably out of those 5,000, only like 3 of us are like really involved. And it's really interesting because we have like, it's all girls. We don't have really any like male participation. Wow. Participation. And a lot of that comes with that like caring about something is like motherly or something. And I don't get that. And it's not just, we just don't have any participation. Caring about something makes you not cool at our age. I don't know why. But how can adults
This
better?
this is fascinating. Do you have any thoughts or plans between now and this the 20th about what
Well,
you might be able to do to increase your number?
Fred, let me jump in and ask, because I think that's an interesting point that you guys talked about. And before we get to your question, I wanted to, Josh and Evan thought the same way, if they felt like they were kind of out there by themselves on this, or, I mean, clearly there's an interest in Nifty for doing this stuff. So I'm excited to see you guys, but I didn't know if you felt the same way in your communities where you were.
I can jump in on that. I think that I have found at times, I've found that there's kind of a hesitance to fully invest oneself in any kind of social action, whether it be climate related or any like gun violence prevention or various other social movements. And I really think that this is an area where the domino effect truly applies, where once like one person or a couple people start to show that this is something that we should all collectively care about, I think that more people start to follow suit. I haven't found there to be a lack of passion though surrounding climate change. I think that especially among our generation, like most of us are fairly well educated on the issue, and we understand the consequences not taking action has. And so I think the most important thing that we have to work on is motivating people to take that action, because it can be like scary and intimidating at times. And I've found myself when reading articles on fires in the Amazon recently, like, I don't know what I can do about that right now. And I'm actively working to create change, and I just don't know where to start at times. And so having these kinds of conversations like the ones that we're having right now to figure out how we can take action, how we can motivate people and like rally behind one central idea and movement is really the most important thing that we can focus on. Because I think that once we get people on board, the sky is the limit with what we can achieve. It's just creating that like communal and social buy-in from everybody.
I really agree with Josh. I think so we haven't coordinated with the climate strike yet. We're sort of waiting for our environmental justice task force to get started and to have a solid base, and then we're gonna look into that. Right now we're sort of just trying to educate ourselves on as much as we can as to like what we're like what's out there. As for my personal experience, I've definitely noticed, like Nicole said, a lot of really passive action. I think when it's easy for somebody to do, like just to buy a metal straw or to sign a petition or to change their profile picture to like something, like put a filter on their profile picture on Facebook, like those things are really easy, but it's hard for people to like actually, it's hard to convince people to take action because everybody's so I feel like everybody's caught up in their own lives,
Yeah.
and it sort of takes a little bit to snap people out of it. But I've also seen like huge climate strikes and like stuff where I live in Vancouver of youth coming out on, you know, on days when they have school, and you know, it's definitely possible for things like this to happen.
Okay.
To answer your question, Howard, on Nifty's creating like action at more local levels, that's one of the things that I think we're shooting to do with the climate task force in Nifty, is to figure out how we can use our outreach across the nation and like across North America, because yay Canada. We're trying to figure out how we can use all of those connections to have the largest impact possible, and we're gradually coming to the conclusion that the best way we can do that is by connecting, like expanding our network even further and having the people that are actually on the ground in their various synagogues and regions doing work there as well, instead of just concentrating at the North American level. We're trying to expand out and focus at the North American level by starting at the focus at the local level by starting at the North American level. So sort of working top down and expanding from where we are now.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you for that feedback. I mean, it's great for us to hear, you know, especially from the youth about it. And we understand that, you know, this is a big jump for Nifty to sort of, you guys just got on the board for the new positions. And so it's a tough ask at this point to sort of ask Nifty to kind of jump in there and get everybody involved in the climate strikes. But we do hope, you know, some individuals, or if not the board as a whole, will be able to participate in Nifty and the local strikes and maybe take that experience back to the task force and to Nifty as a whole and talk about what that means. So do people have, Nicole, I don't know what your time's like now, but if there are there's some other questions here, I think.
Yeah, so Howard asked how can rabbis and synagogues help out, and I know you sent out resources. That's what I'm looking at right now. If you could see, I don't know if Howard, you're on your phone or if you can't see right now, but Scott sent out some like Jewish resources for climate strikes on September 20th through 27th, and to be honest, I don't really know what much of this means, considering I'm not Jewish, but obviously I know contacting youth groups, rabbis can give sermons for the people who aren't on computers or on devices. Rabbis can give sermons supporting the strikers at Shabbat, sorry, I really apologize, for Shabbat services, organize Selishot services on the 21st on the theme of asking for forgiveness for earth destruction, ask a young striker to speak at Selishot service, I'm really sorry, or contacting a local Jewish newspaper about covering the strike, bringing shofar to the climate strike. I really hope I'm not butchering these, but I probably am. And there's just, there seems to be a lot of resources in here for the Jewish community. I was also looking somewhere else. I was trying to do some research just about rhetoric and stuff. And so climateoutreach.com /resources /climate change faith seems to have a lot of resources as well, at the very least regarding, or I guess resource type faith. This is like the whole thing, and they have like a few guides on here. They have Catherine Hayhoe speaking, who's like a really awesome speaker. She's from Texas. She's Christian, but usually religions intertwine about how they view the earth and things like that. And yeah, I was just doing some research, but there's probably some good resources here as well. I was raised Christian, Catholic, whatever. I'm no longer religious, but yeah, that's that. I don't know if there's any other questions. Does anybody else have questions? I hope you
If I can really quick, I'd like to go back just a second to a question you asked a little bit ago, Howard, about how rabbis and other people at the synagogue level can help teens in their actions and goals. I think one of the major things that you can do and that we've begun to see from just having conversations like these is sometimes the climate action is initiated by teens in some synagogues, but sometimes it's initiated by adults. And you have to sort of bring the teens along, just likewise with teens bringing adults along. And one of the things that you can do in a position of influence in your temple or wherever the people on this call work is to try to just create this sort of momentum. Our big goal is to create a momentum moving forward so that we can use that momentum to create action. And so motivating teens to go to strikes and to protest and take tangible actions like contacting representatives and really making their voices heard is really, really helpful for what we're doing. Another one of the things, and well, sort of in the same vein of thought, is just creating times where people are already going to be all together, where you can take action. So like Sunday school is a perfect example of that, where you have a lot of people from your congregation all in one place, and you can motivate all of those people in that moment while you're all together to take some sort of action, whether it be all writing a letter to a representative or talking about the upcoming strikes and stuff like that. So really it's just spreading awareness and motivating others to take action and like follow in your footsteps in terms of what you're already doing.
And I think what Josh is, the other piece I'll add is that one of the things NIFTY's working on and why we're here is, Josh said there's some places where adults are taking the lead and some where teens are taking the lead, but the more we can bring each other along and make a partnership, that's where I think the true magic is going to happen. So in terms of what you can do with your synagogues is, reach out to a few teens and just see if they're interested in being on board, and then you'll have their buy-in as well.
Great. Thanks for those suggestions. Yep. Go ahead, Fred.
Do you recommend that we reach out to local NIFTY leaders?
I would, sure. I mean, we're still getting started, as both Josh and Evan said, we're just getting off the ground. But I would say more focus on, start with what's ever happening in your own synagogue in your own cities. And then I think there'll be more coming down the pipeline in the next couple of months from us and from NIFTY.
I just sent the links that I had mentioned in the chat.
Great, thanks. Well, let's switch here in a minute. And Nicole, you're welcome to stay with us if you'd like, but if you need to, we'll kind of talk. I want to brainstorm some more about what people can do at the synagogue level. Joss and Lynn, started that conversation, which is great, with a number of suggestions. And then let's take a few minutes and do maybe a bit of brainstorming, what people are thinking. Some people, Bob Kibrick maybe has some plans already, and out there to do some things on the climate strike. I don't know, but if some of you do and you've got some plans with your synagogue, please let us, throw those out there for us now to do some brainstorming. Sort of the question may be on the table about how to involve both youth and adults at the congregations to attend the strike. How do you get them involved? Do you guys have some thoughts about that? Before Nicole, I know you're going to run a jump at some point, so I just want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. And if you have to jump off, that's fine. And We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us and letting us know some of these things. So thanks so much.
Thank you for inviting me. Yeah, I have to go eat dinner. But I hope you guys do figure how to get Jewish youth involved. I think faith-based action is something that's very lacking. Obviously, I haven't really been involved in that because of my loss in faith. But I definitely think it's a good resource to grab people. So I'll definitely try and get some people from like my local church. Thank you guys.
Thanks, Nicole. All right, so back in the question, are there some actions that at your synagogues that you're doing that you could share with us about getting people to the strike, or what's going on there? Or Fred, you started talking a little bit about some of that as well.
I'd let Howard take the lead.
Thanks, Fred. It's a good thing you can't see my voice. Anyway, I mean my face. Can't see my voice either. Anyway, at our own temple, partly because there are people involved in energy in our congregation in Sudbury, and not only me, and partly by the outreach that JCAN did from Fred and Rabbi Katie, and including the big climate conference that the JCAN put together last March, was it, in the Boston area, but which actually did draw nationally. We started looking at our own, at our temple's own, several of us started looking at our temple's own energy profile and at the possibilities of adding solar. Quickly concluded that solar was not suitable for our building, but that we wanted to do whatever we could to reduce our carbon footprint beyond what we had already done in lighting and some other areas. And then partly because of this a scattering of interest among people at our temple, and partly, and especially the profile raised by JCAN's climate conference, which about a dozen people from our temple attended. A group did start up at our temple, which doesn't have a formal name yet. Nominally, it's under the vice president for Tikkun Olam, who's in the energy finance field, by the way. Conversations have begun at our temple, and the rabbi himself, who has had an interest in this since before he came to us some months ago from his pulpit in Western Mass, he is very much interested. It was mentioned in last year's Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, I forget which, sermon, and it's definitely going to be there this year. And he is very keen on getting more involved, getting the whole getting the temple involved in different ways. We had a nice chat this afternoon about this, and he's going to be talking with our education director about it. And we do happen to have a youth activities director as well, whom I haven't met. So we've got those three professionals in the building to work through. With regard to JCAN, I've gotten JCAN registered as a partner in the Boston strike, and gotten some materials from the Boston strike folks, who of course also are involved in this worldwide network, which has lots of materials that it does share and is very happy to share. And as long as it's clear that this event belongs to the youth, and adults are invited and indeed urged to also strike and also participate to support their own youth who are involved in the striking, and to contribute in any way, be it logistics or cash or whatever. There's a lot of logistic needs in putting each local strike together. They're very happy to have us. We just don't take over. It's their strike, and it's their future, and it's their future. And just one other thing I wanted to add, and that is my conversation with the temple. It was very clear that the notion of stewardship for the earth, which we share also with with Christian denominations, and the notion that this is practically the highest form of tikkun, highest challenge for which tikkun olam is relevant, I think could strike a chord in the educational and liturgical areas. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
I have a question, Scott.
Sure. Yeah, Stephanie, go ahead.
People who are more involved with the RAC, is there some way that the RAC can help NIFTY with this?
Good
I think
Lynn,
Josh was really right. I mean, I think the youth and people our age have to work together on this.
Yeah, so NIFTY and the RAC, obviously, we're all working very closely together. I just can't speak. I can't speak for the RAC, but I know that they are also working with a group, the Brito Lum group, and they're also working on their plans. So yes, but I just don't know that we are going to be ready for the September 20th date in the way that we want to be.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I think we're going to be able to commit to things, as the year goes on, but and we wanted to be on this call to be educated and to make sure we know what's going on out there. And really, though, it's not a matter of like Josh and Evan aren't willing and ready. It's that we have a process for bringing as many teams on board as we can, and we don't want to just jump in. As wonderful as this is, we can't just commit NIFTY and the RAC to it until we're ready to move forward. But there's a lot of other places where I think we'll be super successful.
Well, it's perfectly obvious that this is an issue that's going to keep going long after the September 20th
exactly.
strikes. If anything, it'll get more important, not less.
And I'll just give you guys for future thinking. We have Fred Davis and Rabbi Katie on for JCAN. So in the future, you guys, these are experts in a number of different areas, and I'll just point out, and to keep them in mind, for Fred, mention some of the work that they're doing at the local synagogue. He's an expert on greening the synagogue, so if you ever want to, in the future, you may want to think about bringing him in for a webinar to work with, show NIFTY people some of the ways that they can get involved in their local synagogue to make those kinds of changes. And they've got a process for doing that, and certification, I guess. So that's good. That's important, I think, for thinking towards the future. I wanted to ask Bob Kibrick. Bob, are you guys involved with doing some kind of strike support there where you are? And if so, what does that look like?
Am I unmuted yet?
You're good.
We have a strike that's being organized in Santa Cruz by a number of groups. Our temple Social Action Committee is having its next meeting on Thursday, and we're on the agenda is to determine how best we can coordinate with the existing strike plan. So I'll know more after Thursday, but we're certainly going to push for that, and we'll see whether our local, NIFTY chapter is going to get engaged in this. With it being summertime right now and no temple school is making it a little bit difficult to figure out how we can get the temple school students engaged.
One of the things that we might be able to do that isn't necessarily directly related to NIFTY, although it's very closely tied, is to try, as it relates to the climate strike, is to see how we can motivate the youth at our respective temples to come out and show support for the strike. It like Lynn said, it will be really difficult to create that kind of momentum that we would need within NIFTY with the time that we have and what we like the momentum that we already have going for us. It would be very difficult to get something solidified, but we can all work with our respective youth at our temples to get them motivated to go out and really show support for this movement.
One of the things that that I'm thinking about as I'm listening to all of this is that in some level, this strike is like an organizing opportunity for all of us. This is a great opportunity that's really bringing, us older folks and youth together, and that can so it's sort of like a beginning as well as it, not just. I mean, yes, it is in and of itself, but it's a beginning of building that relationship much more strongly than we've had in the past. So, we can see, if we think about it as an ongoing process, then as was mentioned before about the rack and whatever, those are things that this is the opportunity to start that conversation as opposed to feeling like it has to be all finished by then.
One of the things, going back to the rack, that I think will really help once it gets started is the rack is currently in the process of flipping their legislative assistants, or LAs for short, which are basically first-year college students that are doing really impressive work with the rack. And so all of their LAs are either leaving or have left already, and their new LAs are coming in. And once those people, they're college graduates, I stand corrected. Once those people really start their work, I think that they will be able to help us in a really meaningful way in terms of like the rack's outreach to synagogues and the rack's connections with NIFTY. Those LAs, from my understanding, really kind of make the rack. They do a lot of the heavy lifting and they're just like the motor to the system. So once they get started, I think that will help us a lot.
So to add another seat to that is after September 20th, I don't remember when Sukkot exactly is, but I imagine it's like a month afterwards or a month and a half. And Rabbi Arthur Wasco, as usual, has put out a new call for doing this kind of work on Sukkot and connecting, the environmental reality and lessons of that holiday to these kinds of issues. So I just want to plant that seed of sort of bringing potentially information about that to September 20th, so that there's a sort of a potential follow-up step.
Yeah, that's a great reminder, Rabbi Moshe. Thank you for that, and maybe we'll make sure that we, push that a little bit more, and for people to think about, in the future about that. John Brown is on. He got on a little bit late, I think, and so he never introduced himself. And I'm wondering if, John, can you do that a little quickly, and then let us know what you think. What's going on where you are. Let me make sure that I can unmute him. Okay.
Yes, couldn't figure out how to do that. I'm in Winchester, Mass, and I'm a member of JCAN, but sort of, not one of the most active members. And I just like to try to figure out where I can fit into things. Usually I find reasons or maybe excuses that I can't really help with a lot of things. And I was late to this meeting because I was on our local chapter Citizens Climate Lobby meeting. But I'm sort of also do some stuff with 350 Mass local meetings. But for the most part, I sort of show up, and doesn't, even despite what Woody Allen said, it really doesn't really count for 90%.
Are you doing things through your temple there, or?
I'm very frustrated. I lived in until a couple years ago. I lived in a very small town in Pennsylvania. We had a temple of 100, and I had a couple of people that I knew that we didn't have any committee or anything. There wasn't anything on climate, so I moved here and thought, oh, we're going to join a much bigger synagogue, and I'm not really a whole lot farther along here. I have several individuals that I can, at an oneg, talk about something climate, but there doesn't seem to be any great momentum to create a climate group. I occasionally mention it, and nobody comes flocking and say, "What a wonderful idea!" there's a lot of social action. I think it's probably because of our times. The social action is mostly toward, groups that are being ostracized and so forth in the larger political situation. I think there probably had been some more climate concern before they put solar panels on the roof before I got here, but that group is no longer active. But I again, like I say, I keep hanging around, and I'm hoping eventually I'll meet a couple of people say, yeah, let's get something going. But it's also I'm new in the area, so it's kind of hard for me. I don't know too many people, and and I'm not a known leader or anything like that. So,
will you be part of the climate strike? And I don't know if there's one in your area or it's Boston that they're pulling people in, or what's.
Well, I'm sort of still, have my tentacles or whatever up to figure out if there's some way that I can be of help. I don't have kids in school. I haven't had kids in school here. My kids went to school in Pennsylvania, so forth and so on. So I don't have any communication with schools and so forth. But if I find some small way that I can help out with something going on here, I would look into that. But I haven't seen that show up for me really.
Okay, I guess one of the resources, I think Nicole put this up momentarily, and I'll have to double check if we sent that out as a resource, but there's a website. What is it? Did she say that one was strikewithus.org?
Right. I wrote that down.
Okay, very good. So that's always something to check. I want to check in. I don't know if we introduced Harvey Michaels might be in the same situation. Maybe he didn't get a chance to introduce himself before, so I wanted to ask Harvey if he might do that quickly, and then to let us know if he's involved with a temple there that could tell us a little bit about what they're doing for Climate Strike.
Hi, sorry to get on late. Can you hear me? Yep. Okay, good. So I'm involved in Temple Israel in Boston, and somewhat involved in Temple Shir Tikva in Wayland. And both are doing quite a bit. Temple Israel has for a while. Temple Shir Tikva is in the process of developing a mission statement on environment. And we'll see if that takes hold, but I'm really pleased that they're doing that, living here in Wayland for a long time. I also teach at MIT, so next week the students come back. And one reason I was anxious to get in this call is to get ahead of the curve a little bit. I teach energy management and environmental policy there. And I'm sure that there will be some action associated with the climate strike, but nothing in advance of the school year. And I'm actually surprised about that. There's generally activism on the MIT campus. I would think that there will be. I think they probably will do something to organize and go into Boston, but I don't know about it if they are. And that concerns me a little bit. So I'm looking to gather some information, and also I get a sense just listening on the call today and some other conversations that maybe the next time around there's some urgency for there being something concrete we're striking about. This seems to be concrete in terms of bringing climate to the forefront, and that's great. But some specific things and maybe particular policy actions, whether it's getting back into the Paris Treaty or not letting the tax credits for renewables drop as they're supposed to start doing after the end of the year, or some things like that to actually be concrete rallying cries, as well as generally bringing some focus on the topic.
Okay, that's good food for thought. Harvey, have you looked at any of these sites to see if somebody at MIT has actually organizing a strike or event there, or so what are you depending on for?
Well, it's Fossil Free MIT.
Okay.
I haven't seen anything happen particularly with that. There are local chapters of 350.org, and there are their climate groups. So there's a sustainability club. So we'll see what they do, but next week is really when it starts.
Okay. Well, good luck with that. We're depending on MIT to come through with a big event there.
One would think, probably a good solution too. That's what we should do.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you for that. Nifty, you guys have a connection now to MIT if you want to take advantage of that sometime. Anyway, I'm just kidding. One of the questions I have, and we're kind of, and I appreciate you guys sticking around past 9 o'clock here, and I don't want to belabor too much more time, is, I guess we don't have exactly a quorum here, but I was going to ask for HGI or High Ground Initiative to be okay if we endorse the climate strike and for what that's worth. And, I guess in the beginning of the conversation, Nicole was talking about various partners. I don't know, given that we're not a national group in the same
I
way.
second it.
Okay, thanks, Fred. We'll move forward and see if they want to have us as a partner. I suppose we could do that if there's sufficient. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, great.
You could be a partner with a strike in your area, be a direct partner.
Yeah.
At least.
At least, yeah. Well, I want to at least hold it to the myth that we're spreading around nationally. We seem to have a lot of representatives from around North America on this call, so that's nice. But I think you're right, is we may want to do some local work too. Are there any other comments here? We'll take another couple minutes and then.
Yeah, I just want to say one more thing.
Go ahead.
If I can say just one more thing, I just know many of the people on this call, and I respect all of you, and I think I know the power behind the organizing we're doing. Here at JCAN, Howard is tasked with crafting our message, and every day that goes by, it seems it gets a bit more as the September 20th event takes more shape or becomes more chaotic, whichever it is. But just from what Howard has been sharing is that there is a lot of action, a lot of activity. And I just want to say that JCAN has been growing our contacts. We now have probably 800 contacts mostly around the country. And I am looking forward to us starting the button, saying this is what JCAN recommends, how you engage in between now and September 20th to everyone on our list. And I think that's going to mean each person on our list, we're going to be encouraging to get in touch with a number of other people. As I posted a minute ago, Bill McKibben this is likely going to be the largest climate event ever on the planet. And last year, it was to 1.2 students on some of those Fridays. So in order for that to happen, that means each of us activate whatever our networks are, touch a number of people who haven't come out to such events before, and get them to do stuff, all just on one day. And I think it can happen. As I said, we've got whatever it is, 24 days, 7 touches per person. That means we just have to touch everybody once every 3 days. It can be done. Yasher Koach for everybody working on it.
Thanks, Fred, and I agree with that point and Rabbi Katie's point about this being a wonderful opportunity to do that kind of outreach, and I would encourage all of you to do that kind of work in your temples. I also, I know that Nifty it's going to be you guys are just getting started, and I would encourage you, if at least in your individual areas, to try to get out to the strike and support that, and get a sense from talking to your presidents and chapters around the country, what might be what they're thinking of for their area as well. And it's really I think it's something, and I hope our rabbis Moshe and Rabbi Katie will agree. It's sort of a profound moral issue for all religions, and particularly for the Jewish religion here, to take on this issue. And so we hope that, our youth will also rise to the occasion and do some outreach and get involved, because this will be a critical issue for us. As we talked about, this is really just starting, and we'll be working on this issue for many years to come. So thank you. Howard, did you had your hand raised?
Yes, I just wanted to remind folks that the September 7th, September 20th is the beginning of 8 days of activity. I haven't seen much of it in the way of a schedule of what those activities are, and they may be different from city to city, but it's not only, you might not be able to make it on the 20th, but there are other things to follow. And then beyond that week, of course, it will never end.
Right, and
unless we fail, and then of course it will all end.
And I'm also hoping that I'm really impressed with the Nifty reps, and I'm really hoping that you guys will stay involved with HGI. I would love for you to join in all our calls. It would be really wonderful.
Yes, thanks very much. And as we said, yeah, there's certainly the strike is going to continue that week, and as Nicole was reading in the beginning, there's opportunities that Shabbat the 20th, since it starts on a Friday, for you to do things at your temple or encourage people to do things nationwide or worldwide. And then the Slichot service Saturday night is another opportunity to sort of consider what signs of sins we've had against the earth. So encouraging your local Jewish communities to get involved with this strike through prayer and through services, I think, would be certainly welcome. So I want to thank everybody for being on the call. Any other final comments? And otherwise, thanks for hanging in there. And Ocha, is that live long and prosper kind of thing going on there? But thank you all. And we'll let you know about our next meeting, and perhaps getting some reports from people about how the strike went in your community. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Pat.
you.
Good night.